Hey, everybody, it is Trags back with you for another episode of the JungleRoar podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the link below, and I want to hear all of your comments, good, bad, and indifferent. This week, I welcome back old friend James Rapien of SI.com, allbengals.com, and of course, Locked On Bengals, the only daily podcast of the Cincinnati Bengals devoted to your team in stripes. James, how you doing?
I'm doing well. You called me old there, though, Trags. I'm not old.
I know I said you were an old friend. There's a difference between
here we go.
Being called old, it's semantics, and an old friend. You are an old friend, and I appreciate you jumping on the pod. There's a lot of different NFL subjects I want to get to in this podcast. We'll stick with the Bengals to start off. And I think the way they are playing is lending a lot of optimism around Houday Nation that this team is finally starting to figure things out and starting to hit a stride. That being said, I think Joe Burrow, who was on the Rich Eisen show on Wednesday afternoon, acknowledged, I've got to find a way to beat the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be a big challenge. I've never beaten the Cleveland Browns. Coming up on Halloween night in Cleveland, this has the makings of, even though it's a team that the Bengals should beat, it's going to be a difficult game for the Bengals to win because in the past, the Bengals have had trouble stopping, obviously, Nick Chubb, one of their running backs, and Kareem Hunt, the other. How do you look at their chances going into Monday night?
You got to like them simply because it's Jacoby Brissett versus Joe Burrow. And, if these two guys switch teams, you still might pick the team that Burrow's on, right? It's just, he's that special and he's playing at that level right now. And look, he may say that, and I didn't hear his exact comments on the Rich Eisen show as of this recording, but looking at it, he's played the Browns 3 times. The first 2 times he was the best player on the field. And that included his second game overall, where he was 37 of 61 for 316. He was just LeBron tweeted about him. He was just dragging a bad Bengals team on primetime 4 days after his NFL debut. And so they came up 1 score short. And then he gave them the lead twice in that second game against the Browns, and the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed later that season. Now, the game that I'm sure is on his mind is last year, where it was Baker and Odell, and they release Odell, and it was just this whole thing. And, the Browns came out and just crushed them at Paul Brown Stadium. And a lot of that had to do with Denzel Ward's pick 6 on the Bengals' first drive of the game. And so, yeah, I think Burrow has that on his mind. And, how hard is it going to be? It's challenging to go up in that environment and to go there against a desperate team whose season is on the line. They're 2-5. You fall to 2-6, you're done. I don't care who's coming back. It doesn't matter what's happening. I just don't see the Browns making a playoff push. And so it's a huge, huge game for them in a tough road environment. At the same time, I do think the Bengals have more talent. So that's it's always good to have.
It's a game of talent, but it's also a game of coaching and preparation. And I think the Bengals and Lou Anarumo, one of the reasons I think he had a headache the size of Nebraska, as he joked around on Monday, even after a win, is he knows what's coming up. And this is a physical Browns team. When they are effective, they're going to want to run the ball. And they're going to want to run the ball at a Bengals defense that probably won't have DJ Reader again. We can assume that, I think, safely, James, and probably definitely won't have Josh Tupou. I don't see him coming back this week either at all. So you're talking about 2 big studs in the middle of that defensive line. And what the Browns are going to want to do is exert their will and their dominance in the ground attack and beat the Bengals at the line of scrimmage like they did last year.
Yeah, I think it's last week, and the Bengals handled that pretty well last week, but the better version, the playoff version, right? Yep. And I know the Falcons have more wins than the Browns, and they beat the Browns head to head, but the Browns rushing attack is for real. And they have the best 1-2 punch in the league. That offensive line is better than the Falcons' offensive line, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's tough. The good news is Jay Tufele has showed that he can be a guy for the Bengals. Even after DJ Reader and Josh Tupou get back, I think he's going to get reps, which is huge because that was one of their positions, weaker positions, I would say, going in and coming into this season. They get him off of waivers and boom, turns out he could be a steal in his second season. And so that's part of it. Zachary Carter showed some, Joseph Osai showed some. So these other defensive linemen have showed something. But the other good news, and I think this is actually really good news when it comes to facing the Cleveland Browns, it sounds like Logan Wilson's going to be back. And having that size speed combo, as good as Akeem Davis-Gaither was the other day, he's not Logan Wilson. And so it's nice to have another guy. You can get the speed out there with Akeem Davis-Gaither, but you can get the speed and the size out there with Logan Wilson. And so if he's able to suit up, it'd be a huge addition to this defense ahead of that matchup.
Not only the season speed and size, James, but the instinct. And I think both of us were noticing a couple of times when Marcus Bailey rushed a gap against the Falcons, and he was just a little bit out of position, and he got kind of pinned on one of those running plays that the Falcons ran. You know the one I'm talking about, when I turned to you and I said, I don't think Logan Wilson commits himself that deep into the hole that quick into the play. Those are the intangibles, in my estimation, that make Logan Wilson so valuable. And that's what Lou Anarumo loves about Logan Wilson, what Zach Taylor loves about the guy. He knows how to read the gaps and read what the offense is about to do. And he waits that half a tick or a tick longer to make his decision, then makes the play. And to me, in the NFL, that's what turns a good linebacker into a great linebacker, our instincts. And that's what they miss when Logan Wilson's not in there.
No doubt about it. Is they're much better with him in there. And against the pass too, he's able to guard Kareem Hunt out of the backfield, which is certainly going to be one of those challenges. And, the Browns aren't going to have David Njoku, but that just means that they're going to lean more on these other guys, which is scary because they're really good at running the ball. And the Bengals, as good as they are at stopping the run fully healthy, we don't know what they are right now against a Browns team, like that. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it is what they did last week. And I don't know if you saw the mic'd up with Joe Burrow, but Lou Anarumo towards the end of it thanks Burrow. And guess why he thanked Burrow? Because Joe Burrow went out there and hung 35 on the Falcons. And when you do that, it makes life much easier on a shorthanded defense. And so I'm not saying they're going to hang 35 on the Browns, but getting out to an early lead and being able to go that way instead of playing from behind like they have so often this season, I think that's a huge, even bigger than it was against the Falcons, huge storyline going into Monday.
We'll see what the injury report is when it first comes out on Thursday, but if Denzel Ward cannot play or he's limited in this game, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference maker. And I do think the Bengals, if Denzel Ward's not in there, James, you could see what Burrow did on that Thursday night game, his second career NFL game. You could see that repeat itself, but the Browns won't have a Baker Mayfield to lead them back. And I think you'll have a much different and more experienced defense for the Bengals representing them this Monday night in Cleveland. That's what I think the game plan is. Get out, like you said, get a lead early like you did against the Falcons, but again, attack vertically, especially if Denzel Ward's not up to 100%.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see. It's such a long week. He already missed 1 week with a concussion and you have the extra day. I would just assume he's playing, but you shouldn't with concussions, right? That's dangerous to do. And so you're right. If they don't have him, that's a huge piece that, I wouldn't want to have to deal with Jamar Chase without Denzel Ward. That's why you pay Denzel Ward is to deal with guys like Jamar Chase. And he handled him pretty well last year. So if you don't have him, even if you do, I think this Bengals offense should, and again, I hold them to a really high standard. 30 plus points a game is kind of my expectation. Whether you're going up against a great defense or not, or good defense or bad defense, regardless of opponent, I think they have that kind of talent level. And so that's where I'm at. And so we'll see. But with the way Burrow's playing and dissecting and doing those things, you would expect him to be much better than he was the last time he saw the Browns. And the other thing, you mentioned that 2020 game, he threw the ball 61 times, was really inefficient. and they had to really dink and dunk their way downfield because they just didn't have anybody that was going to get separation downfield. That was T. Higgins' second game.
Yep.
You know, AJ Green was just blanketed by Denzel Ward. You know, you had Tyler Boyd, but he's not known for that. John Ross had ghost from the past, right? Had kind of getting knocked out of the rotation for T. Higgins there. And so all of those things happened that night, and he was still able to put 30 on the board. So we've seen him in big moments on Thursday night at First Energy Stadium. It was a little earlier in the year. It was about, you know, a month earlier, but so it'll probably be a little chillier on Halloween night. But yeah, I expect Burrow to have a big passing game, and, you know, he hasn't turning the ball over much recently. And I expect that to be the case, assuming, I'm sure you'll go here, they can block Mr. Garrett, because Myles Garrett's a stud.
Okay, you let into and you're doing my job for me, so I appreciate that. And you do it much better than I do, but I won't self-flagellate too much here. The Browns and their ability to get after the passer. That is something that concerns me every time the Bengals face a heavy edge pass rushing team. And this is a team, obviously, with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. Again, if he's 100%, those are two guys that can be game wreckers. Last year, when the Browns got out to the lead and the Bengals tied that game at 7-7 to 1 at Paul Brown Stadium, the Browns then took the lead, and then it was Katie bar the door. The Browns were able to really unleash. The Bengals want to avoid that again. I think the Bengals offensive line is in a different place now. I think they're much more confident. We've seen a much different and better offensive line, more consistent, especially in the interior offensive line. Those two guys concern me, but they don't strike the fear of God in me like it would have been a month ago.
Because the Bengals offensive line has showed flashes, and we'll see how Lyle Collins is. He was limping through the locker room last time we saw him on Monday. I would expect him to play, but we'll see. It's you feel better, but Garrett is one of those. Clowney is what he is, right? But Garrett is one of those like 3 guys, 4 guys, you know, the Bosas, you know, obviously TJ Watt, and now Micah Parsons has to be in there, where if you're facing him, you're always nervous. And you always know that he's one play away from just completely wrecking the game.
And you're game planning all the time for him.
No doubt. And so I feel better, but this is what a test, right? Because the interior of the Bengals offensive line, I think, has been pretty solid all year. I really do. I think Cordell Volson continues to develop. Alex Kappa's had some really high-end games. Ted Karras, and Jonah Williams was playing through that knee. And right before he got injured, I thought he was playing his best ball of the year, got injured, and he's held his own and hasn't missed any time, which is great. And Lyle Collins is coming into his own a bit too. And you just don't want that ankle now to hamper him when he was starting to feel good again. So I'm more confident in this offensive line than I was a month ago, but they haven't faced any Myles Garretts. So I am curious to see how these edge players specifically handle it.
He is James Rapien, does a great job covering the Bengals for allbengals.com, si.com, and the Locked On Bengals Daily Podcast. All right, James, want to go to the defensive side of the ball. When does Cam Taylor-Britt take over for Eli Apple?
Oh,
happen?
It certainly could this week. It certainly could. You know, but this is one of those games where you need to shut down every receiver not named Amari Cooper, right? He's their one guy. And so if Donovan Peoples-Jones, who beat the Bengals in that second matchup against Burrow when it was 37-34 at Paul Brown Stadium at the end of the middle of the 2020 season.
Right.
You know, if you're Eli Apple, you can't give that up. If you're Cam Taylor-Britt, you can't give that up. You got to find a way to shut down everybody. And then Amari Cooper, he's going to get his. He's a really good route runner, right? That's part of it. And maybe Cheeto says otherwise, but I'm just accepting that he'll have 5-6 catches, and that's just part of the game plan. So we'll see. But, you know, Cam Taylor-Britt, I like that they got him reps. I don't think the plan was to play him more snaps than Eli Apple. I do not buy that at all. And you look at the snap counts on defense, and it's like, oh, so it wouldn't be shocking if he takes over this week and starts, or if they continue to do this little rotation where they don't completely lose Eli Apple, because I think that might be part of it. You don't want to lose him. He still is valuable. And so how do you do it? Maybe you start Eli, but you continue to do this. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is. I do think that the past couple of weeks, Eli Apple's been exposed a bit. And you drafted Cam Taylor-Britt with the 60th pick, traded up for him from 63 to 60 for a reason.
Well, and the other thing, James, is that he did not have a good end of the first half in New Orleans. He gave up 2 big third down conversions to the Saints that allowed them to take a big halftime lead and really take command of that game in the first half. And then against the Falcons at the end of the first half, he gives up that bomb, that 75-yard bomb to Damiere Byrd. And maybe he underestimated just how fast Damiere Byrd is and how he could fly by him. And yes, he was supposed to have help from Von Bell over the top. Von Bell was supposed to get over, didn't. He was too deep into the box. He didn't get back. And once he got by Eli Apple, it makes Eli Apple look bad. And yes, he got beat, but I don't think the Bengals defense was designed to have Eli Apple have nobody behind him in that situation. Clearly it wasn't. The whole point I'm making here in this rambling statement is that that Eli needs to have as many reps as possible to not lose his confidence, like you said.
Sure. Because look, he stepped up for them in a big way last year because Trey Waynes was a free agent bust, and we could talk about injuries, but he never showed a desire to be in Cincinnati. And so Eli Apple was the best insurance policy ever because it paid off. And, guess what? Cooper Kupp gets open against everybody. So I don't want to hear that. Odell Beckham Jr. is really, really good, right? That happens, I'm referring to Super Bowl 56, of course. So when it comes to Eli Apple, do I love the Twitter stuff? No. Do I get why people hate him? I do. Do I think he's a solid player? Absolutely. And that doesn't mean he's not going to get beat. He is going to get beat. And he's probably an average starting corner or slightly below average starting corner. But he's the one weak link. There aren't any weak links in the secondary. He's the one weak link. And so try to keep his confidence up. And yet, let's see how Cam Taylor-Britt does, because maybe Cam Taylor-Britt shines. And, we're calling him Juice and talking to him afterwards because he has 2 picks on Monday night. Who knows? But, that's the thing is get both of these guys rolling a little bit, get the rookie, get his feet wet because you could rely on him and need him. At the same time, you can't lose Eli Apple completely. And I do wonder how he would take being just completely benched and sent, to that 4th cornerback spot. I'm sure he would not necessarily respond the right way. It would be hard for a veteran to do so.
And there's no doubt, if you were reading between the lines, when I asked Lou Anarumo on Monday about this, he said, Eli Apple is a professional. We know he understood going into the game that Cam Taylor-Britt was going to get snaps, and we still have a lot of faith in Eli Apple, and we think that he can handle this particular situation of essentially platooning that position on the field. But he added, we'll see, meaning even Lou Anarumo doesn't know quite exactly how this is going to play out in Eli Apple's mind, how it's going to play out in terms of his confidence, how he's going to handle this. He handled it over one game great. He stood on the sideline, he was there, he congratulated everybody when they came off the field on a defensive series. But long term, that can impact the confidence both on and off the field. All right. I think Cam Taylor-Britt is going to wind up with quite a few snaps going forward. It's going to be a great story to watch. I want to finish up here talking about a team. James, did you know I covered the New England Patriots? And did you know I was fascinated by that game on Monday night at Gillette Stadium? You know why I was fascinated? Because it did not turn out at all, even reasonably close to what I expected. And to watch a Bill Belichick coach team disintegrate on national TV like that, and to see the quarterback drama unfold the way it did was remarkable to me. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And it makes you appreciate in a market like Cincinnati, when you have a Joe Burrow, you have the guy, the franchise, there are no questions. I mean, the Bengals have been through this for decades, looking for that guy. They have that guy. Now in New England, after 2 decades of Tom Brady, they're wondering, are we behind Mac Jones? Are we behind Bailey Zappi? But if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. You agree with that?
In this scenario, absolutely.
So you have a proposal that you made to me on Monday that I think is pretty fascinating.
Well, you're right. When you have 2 mediocre or unproven commodities, you can't feel confident in either one. And why
I think, but by the way, I'm going to jump in there. I don't think Mac Jones is mediocre. Are you talking about Mac Jones? I don't think he's mediocre. I think he's good, but he's not spectacular. I think Bailey Zappi is an unproven rookie. That's what I think you have. I don't think they're necessarily, just based on what we saw Monday night, just on that off that game, I don't necessarily think they're mediocre, but continue.
The Patriots threw it 3 times against Buffalo last year. 3.
And you know why?
3.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. You could have done that without a quarterback. You didn't even need Mac Jones should have just stayed home because they didn't need him. What are you so I still say mediocre, right? The offense opened up the other night and they pushed the ball down the field when Zappi got in too. And then things fell apart. And you know why they fell apart? Because I wouldn't buy into either guy. It's the problem is the quarterback. There are a lot of quarterbacks that would have won that game for the Patriots, I think. I really do. And when Zappi came in, it was like, oh, this is how I expected the game to go. Because you're right. I thought that they were going to win that game. And then it just crumbled. And so anybody check on Tom Brady in Tampa Tom? Yeah, things are going awful right now. He's bothered. He's on all the national shows. You got Bill Simmons on his pod saying that the divorce was finalized. We'll see if that's actually true or not. But clearly there's a lot of things that Tom Brady is going through right now. And so with that being the case, yes, assuming that's the case, and the trade deadline is November 1st, 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Right.
There's no place like home, Trags. There's a reason I razz you all the time. And I know Cincinnati's your home. I razz you all the time about covering New England. Why? Because, man, those are the years regardless of what you're going to cherish that time, right? Covering the Patriots.
Yep.
No doubt about it. Well, guess what? Tom Brady and Bill Belichick at this stage, they might just need each other because for some reason, Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich, it's not working, even though the Bucs have talent on paper. And if you look at that New England Patriots team, if you just plug Tom Brady in, boom, I think they would have beaten the Bears. Now, would they be this pass happy team? No. It would be Ramondre Stevenson. It would be, a lot of high end defensive play where these guys would not play the way they did the other night, where they're just getting beat up. And
that was an outlier. There's that defense is a lot better than that, at least better than that, I think. Certainly.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I agree. So to me, it's probably not going to happen. It probably won't happen. But if you're the Patriots, why would you not call the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and say, what do you want for Tom Brady? You want Mac Jones?
That's what I think. At least they would want a young quarterback plus a pick or 2 to get Tom Brady back.
Okay, there you go. And then suddenly the Patriots are a contender. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers look at themselves and say, hey, we're not winning it with Tom. Let's get an asset back or a couple of assets back and reset this thing a little bit.
A former first-round quarterback in Mac Jones.
Exactly. And who knows? Who knows what they would want, but who cares?
If why this is Mac never Jones going to happen, right?
Because of ego?
Yes, because of the 2 primary people involved. And Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. It won't.
And my problem with that is right now, Bill, you have you literally have 0 chance of winning a Super Bowl. There's none. There's no hope. There is 0 chance. And so there's the mediocre. That comes back to Mac Jones. If I thought he was better than mediocre, maybe I would give them a bit of a chance. But yeah, I think Tom Brady, you get him, and then you call Odell Beckham Jr. and you say, come play with Tom. And suddenly it gets real interesting. I know it's fantasy land. I know Tampa would probably say no right away.
That's what we do, James.
And honestly, that call should be made. It should be, because Tom might feel comfort. And I know he sold his house up there, but there might be a certain routine that he was used to, all that stuff. It's tough. And now he's questioning everything, assuming all the stuff in the personal life that we're hearing is true. That would be really freaking hard to go through. So guess what? Go to the place you're most familiar with, that you have the most experience at, an area that you obviously know inside and out, and you could just kind of focus on football and potentially make another run. Because I do think with Brady, he would attract a little bit more. Who knows? I think they would be players in the AFC if that were to happen. I do. Because I still think he can play. I don't think he's just done. I think there's just a lot of it's just a really weird season, and it's hard to fight back all the time when you have 800 different things going on around you.
I told you why it won't happen. The reason it would happen, and the reason that call would be made, it wouldn't be Bill Belichick making the call.
Robert Kraft.
Yes. And they are like father and son. They're always
Tom showed up to his wedding on a Friday. You've heard that about 50 different times.
and it created, depending on whether or not you believe the reports, some dissension in the Buccaneers locker room, that he wasn't on the flight back to Tampa to go fly up to Pittsburgh for the road game that they wound up losing. And that's when Tom had his temper tantrum on the sideline with the offensive line. And I think it was Nick Mangold was making this point on a podcast. And he said that if that were my quarterback and he weren't on the team playing with me, it would bother me. It would absolutely bother me that my quarterback went to a wedding. It's fine. It's his former team's
former boss. Yeah.
His former boss. I understand that. But then you don't travel back to Tampa and then travel up to Pittsburgh for the game. That is a problem with some people in the locker room. But who knows? I just wanted to throw it out there because I think it would be great fodder if Brady went back to New England and retired there, a New England Patriot. And
it makes sense. I think it makes sense for Bill. I didn't get into all of it, but I think it would make sense for Bill. It would make sense for Tom, and it would make sense for the Buccaneers.
What are you dressing up as for Halloween?
Mike Petraglia.
Are you? Okay, I'm going to get a bald mask and paint it red.
Wow.
That's a cheap shot.
Wow. You need to hit the gym if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I do. I'm wearing this bulky sweater.
And throwing a lot of makeup because you got to look a lot younger.
All right.
You're the one who did that to yourself. I don't know why.
I know. Everything good though, right? You're looking forward to Monday Night Football? Staying up late, 3 a.m. Get back to the hotel at 4 a.m. Driving back next morning. Is that what you're doing?
I think that's what we're all doing.
Yeah,
that's what we're all doing, Trags.
What I'm doing. So I'm looking forward to it. Monday night in Cleveland, Halloween. It's going to be a fun night. It's a game, frankly, I think the Bengals have to win. We didn't talk about this, James. They would start 0-3 in the AFC North. And I think more than anything, that's the urgency for the Bengals. And that's what Joe Burrow and everybody knows. Going into this game Monday night at First Energy, they can't go 0-3 in the AFC North, despite the fact that their first two losses in the division were walk-off losses to Pittsburgh and Baltimore. You cannot go 0-3. This, again, feels like another must-have game, and the Bengals, to me, are 2-0 in must-haves. They beat the Jets when they had to avoid going 0-3. They beat the Falcons when they had to, they beat the Saints and when they had to get back to 3-3. And then they beat the Falcons. So they've been good in must-have situations, and I think this is another one for them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It certainly is, especially if they want to be considered a true contender in the division. It's one thing. You want to be a wild card team, fine. You start 0-3 in the division, but if you really want to defend this AFC North crown and make another run at the AFC title,
right,
you're gonna have to beat the Browns. You just are. Without Deshaun Watson, they've had some injuries. It's just a game that you have to handle.
He is James Rapien. He does a tremendous job for allbengals.com. He also hosts the Locked On Bengals podcast and works for SI.com. Anything else you want to promote, James, while we're at it?
No, all set. I appreciate
it. I'm doing your job for you.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just sitting back, Sitting back, relaxing, waiting for that wedding to go to on Friday, like I'm Tom Brady.
By the way, love the shirt.
Oh, thank you.
Give the shirt some play here. There you go.
There we go. A little Cincinnati Bengals talk, love. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's a great logo. Anyway, he's James Rapien. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at James Rapien, all one word, and allbengals.com. I'm Mike Petraglia. You can follow me on Twitter, and be sure to follow the JungleRoar podcast YouTube page. Subscribe or click on the link to subscribe. And I want to hear all your comments, good, bad, and indifferent. For James Rapien, I'm Mike Petraglia. Thanks for watching.